6 seconds. That is the amount of time that a recruiter will spend looking at your resume before deciding to read it fully or throw it off to the unsuccessful bucket. If that daunts you, then stick around where I'm going to run through 5 tips to help optimize your resume and give you the best chance at landing those interviews. Step number 1 is plan, and it's really vital that you spend this time just to think through and write down all the relevant titles and job industries that are of interest to you. This is really important so that you can frame and position your resume and give your resume the best opportunity to be optimized towards what you're applying for. You also need to know what is best practice for the country that you're applying for. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and here the rules differ to some of the countries around the world. So make sure that you check out government websites. Check it out so that you can know what are the important elements that you should have in your resume and what you shouldn't have in your resume. An example of this is that in Australia, we do not talk about or write in your resume your gender, age, ethnicity, religion, or marital status. These elements are deemed not important. Another important aspect is to consider where you're at in your career. If you've recently changed industries or graduated, then you'll be starting your career at the beginning of that journey. So it's important that your resume is framed to highlight the components that will really make you stand out at that point in your career. Whereas when you're perhaps 5, 10, 15 years into your career, your resume will look quite different and you'll be highlighting different elements. We'll be going into both of those in more detail, but just keep that in mind in your planning stage. Lastly, your resume is an opportunity to paint a picture about where you've been, what you have, and where you want to go. Tip number 2 is a layout. And remember, I mentioned 6 seconds is how long on average a recruiter will look at that resume. So you need to make sure that your layout represents the most important information up front on the first page. It both needs to communicate all the right elements as well as look visually appealing and easy on the eyes. As per your planning stage, you want to choose your layout according to whether you're an experienced candidate or whether you're recently graduated or new to that industry. This way you'll be able to have a layout that will optimize and put forward the information that's most important. You need to highlight your best attributes as opposed to highlighting attributes or skills or experience that you're still developing. So you want to be putting out your best foot forward. If you're an experienced candidate, most likely you'll follow the most typical structure, which is to have your contact details at the top, career objective, highlighting your key skills, key systems, key tools, followed by your current or most recent role, which you'll then split into key responsibilities and achievements. If you're a graduate, on the other hand, you'll want to switch out the employment section and focus more on your qualifications, certifications, internships, or grad experience, anything that will really highlight your skills and ability. This way you will have the most important information on both of those resume structures to ensure that the recruiter who is spending those 6 seconds will start to slow down and spend more time to read it in depth. Near the top of your resume is where tip number 3 is, which is career objective, or sometimes known as professional summary. Most of your resume is written in dot point form. The career objective, however, is an opportunity for you to showcase your persuasive writing. This is where you can write directly to the reader, and this is perhaps why it's the most misunderstood and underutilized section of a resume. I will tell you right now, writing fluffy career objectives that you copy and paste from Google will really not get you anywhere. Try to avoid writing in third person and instead writing first person, and try writing 2 to 3 sentences and framing it like this. Where have I been? Where do I want to go? And how does this role help me to get there? And where do I match those skills? Now you can either mock this up as a standard template, or you can take that extra effort and edit the third point that I mentioned, which is focusing on where this role utilizes what you have and gets you to where you want to get to. The career objective is essentially just a shortened version of your cover letter, and this is perhaps why it's such a challenging component when applying for a position. If you need further assistance with cover letter writing, please check out my other video titled To Cover Letter or Not to Cover Letter. Now, tip number 4 is short and sharp, and I don't want this to confuse you with the most widespread myth out there, which is that your resume should only be 1 page in length. I know if you go onto Google, you'll find this commonly everywhere. Personally, I find that one resume will be really forcing and jamming everything into that one page, and you won't really be giving enough detail and enough insight to the reader. However, I do agree with the element that your first page is your most important page, and that's why short and sharp is really important. I believe if you followed my earlier steps, then this will ensure that your first page will really pop with the most important information. That way, it won't matter if your resume goes into 2, even 3 pages in length. More than 3 and you're probably pushing it. A good tip is to make sure that you focus the most on your current or most recent either education or employment. And then as you're cascading backwards chronologically to your previous experience, then you can get shorter and shorter and shorter as those older positions become less important. Some further elements and tips that can help you with that is to 1. Focus your details on your current or most recent role or most relevant role. For graduates, this means homing in on your education. For the remaining roles, keep it extremely tight. Don't bother putting a summary of what the companies do. If you do choose to, keep it short. Split your role into responsibilities and achievements. Achievements can be awards, or they could simply be projects completed, process improvements, efficiency gains, and the like. Don't copy and paste from your position description. Highlight the most important responsibilities, as position descriptions often hold information that is not important and not relevant when applying for positions. Don't include references and don't bother putting available upon request. Keep your spacing between paragraphs to 1 to 2 spaces. That way you don't lose too much space, but you maintain a consistent and clean look. If you have space, feel free to add personal interests, but don't if it forces it into another page. Tip number 5 is underrated and is a poor habit that most of us have carried since our younger days, and this is proofreading. This is really an opportunity to slow down and read your resume from start to finish. And this is where you're going to be looking for a number of different elements. Have you done a spell check and happy with your grammar? Are you happy with the layout and the template? Is page 1 popping with the most important information? Does your career objective portray where you've been, where you want to go, and how this role will get you there? Are you happy with the length of your resume? Is it short and sharp, or is it lacking in detail? Let me know in the comments if you can see any differences between the original resume and the edited version, and if there's any elements that you'd like me to deep dive and to zoom in and spend more time on, please let me know also. But most importantly, don't give up. Keep practicing, keep preparing your resume and your cover letter and all the elements in job searching. It is a skill that you need to develop over time. You might think that your friend perhaps, is better suited to that process than yourself, but the reality is that we all need to practice, we all need to prepare, we all need to put in the work. So best of luck, happy hunting, cheers.